My name is Mpho Dagada. I'm the president of Arise South Africa. And as promised from our last live session, we are unpacking and understanding the Arise South Africa Manifesto. So I hope each and every one of you are ready. We are going to do this in a 10-part series, and today is the first one. I want to encourage all of you to make sure that you've got your notes, make sure you've got something to write. We're going to be sharing extensive knowledge, ensuring that all of us are ready and we understand what is Arise South Africa going to do differently. And as said to you before, we're going to cover all sorts of topics in these next 10 days. I've got so many books around me. We are teaching. We are going deep to understanding the issues in our country, how we solve solutions. So we're going to cover what's going on in South Africa. We're going to cover mineral resources and energy. We're going to cover electricity and power, agriculture and land, crime and corruption, manufacturing, tourism, our leadership crisis, infrastructure, per capita earnings and wealth inequality. We're also going to cover education, sports and recreation, media, fourth industrial revolution, including artificial intelligence. So we're going to cover a lot of things. I want to know from you, what are you looking forward to in the Arise South Africa Manifesto? What is the one thing you are saying, President, I'm looking forward to this, that, and the other, and ensure that you've got something to write down with. Thank you so much. Mishok says, I'm here to learn. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's exactly why we are here. We are here to learn. Now, we cannot go on to understand what's going on in South Africa without us having it written down. And that's the reason why I'm encouraging everybody to say, get yourself a copy of the book. It's available at all bookstores, exclusive books, every bookstore. It's available. I Am the Vision. It's written by your president. Make sure that you get your hands a copy. We are reviewing and we are going through the book. This is the contents of what we are going through. So let's ensure that we all have it. But if you don't have it, it's okay. You'll also learn. There are different people that say, you know what, President, I don't need a book to learn. I need someone to teach me. So we're going to be covering all those things. I see we've already got a question. Somebody's asking, they say, what is your view on land expropriation, property rights, etc.? We're going to cover all of these things in the next few days. So I ask that when you come, get your notepad out, get something to write, because we're going to be covering very important things. Now, Arise South Africa, what we are striving for, because many people say, what is Arise South Africa striving for? Give us a sentence to understand what Arise South Africa is striving for. And I'm going to read it out for you. Arise South Africa strives for a South Africa where poverty, inequality, corruption, and despair have been replaced by boundless opportunities, unwavering justice, and a vibrant democracy powered by innovation. Now, that's one sentence. I want to read the sentence for you again. Arise South Africa strives for a South Africa where poverty, inequality, corruption, and despair have been replaced by boundless opportunities, unwavering justice, and a vibrant democracy powered by innovation. This is one sentence. When somebody asks you and says, what does Arise South Africa stand for? That's what you say to them in your answer. But before we get into the manifesto, it's important that we understand where we come from as a nation. We can't move forward as a nation if we don't understand where we come from, and if we don't fix the issues that we've got from where we come from. So, by definition, what is a manifesto? By definition, when we just check on Google, what is a manifesto? A public declaration of policy and aims, especially one issued before an election by a political party or a candidate. That's the definition of a manifesto. I don't like it. I don't like that definition. I have a different definition that I want to share with each and every one of us. So, in this definition, I'm going to share this definition, and I really like this one. It's from Habakkuk 2, verse 2. It's a definition. It says, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, so he may run that reads it. Very simple. Write the vision, make it plain, so that whoever sees the vision can run. So what we are doing over the next 10 days is we're explaining the vision. We're imparting that vision. So this is vision sharing. We're sharing that vision so that when you go out there and somebody asks you, what is Arise South Africa? How does it work? What's going on? You are able to impart that vision. So this is teaching. And when it comes to teaching, it means that I won't be excited, I won't be screaming. I'll be teaching so that you are able to understand the information being taught. Very, very important. I want to start off by saying this because it's important for us to understand where we are going. The history of South Africa, the history of Africa has been a lie. That's what I want us to start, because we can't fix the future if we don't understand that what we have already written down has been a lie. There was the influence of a gentleman called Marcus Garvey's. Marcus Garvey's, when he wrote down the history of Africa, he sort of wrote down that we were a people without a knowledge or without a sense of where we are going as Africans in the past. And there's a quote that he wrote down that I want to read quickly for us. He says, "A people without knowledge of their past history, their origin, and their culture is like a tree without roots." You have entered the school of politics now. We are understanding what it is that we are discussing here. So we are going in deeper. He was a scholar. He said, a people without knowledge of their past history, their origin, and their culture is like a tree without roots. And many South Africans don't actually know that. Many South Africans, they don't actually know the history of what is the history of South Africans. And we need to make sure that we grasp that history so that we know where we are going in the future. There's a lot of critique that I've done of the narratives that have defined the history of Africans that we enjoy today. A lot of the narratives were defined by colonialism. A lot of the narratives were written for us by other people that came to Africa. They were not written by the African forefathers that existed. A lot of the history that we see were written by scholars that came to see, and they depicted what was actually going on in Africa. And if you are to understand our politics properly, we need to understand, where do we come from as a nation? Where do we come from as South Africans? What was going on? And the history that we have today is sort of the history that's been written by our colonials or people that colonized Africa. And they wrote the history. They sort of wrote the history that we were just running around as these bushmen or bushwomen, and we didn't know what we were doing. There was no civilization. They sort of wrote about Africans as people that were sort of barbaric or people that didn't know what they were doing. They wrote what they understood or what they saw African people to be. Now, we're going deep here in history. We're going deep. So I hope each and every one of you are writing down notes. So in the history of Africans, the story of the African people was written by colonialists. And these colonialists, what they sort of saw it and wrote it down in their way that they saw it. That these were bushmen and bushwomen that didn't know how to create things. They didn't know what to do. They were just running around and animals were amongst them. They sort of wrote it down as though we were just animalistic in our behavior. And people, when we talk about the history of Africa, they don't want us to talk about these things. But let me explain the issue if we don't talk about it. When we are now carving a new vision for what we should be as Africa, what we should be as South Africans, we cannot carve a new vision without understanding where we come from. A tree without roots, as Marcus said in his quote, he says that you're not going to have a direction of where you're going. So as they wrote about this made it through to our textbooks, it made it through to the children's books, it made it through to the history pages of the world. And the world believed that Africa was an uncivilized place, or a place filled with uncivilized people. I want to correct that, because this was a systemic destruction of African civilization. It was not true. Africans were not disorganized people before colonialists arrived. We were not bushmen and bushwomen running up and down. It was a lie. And this lie was perpetuated by colonialists It was not true. What is the truth? The truth is that Africa had knowledge systems. This is back our forefathers, even before you and I were ever born. There were knowledge systems. Africa had trade systems. We had cultures that we were actually doing before colonialists actually arrived. So it's very dangerous for us to allow African history to have a Eurocentric view, or to rather let the capitalists at that time, the colonial capitalist establishment at that time, to be the one that defines what we were actually doing. Because the capitalist colonial establishment, they actually saw Africans as property. Rather, they saw them as slaves or human beings that they could use for them to be able to get something done. So, how can you trust the history lessons of somebody that saw our forefathers as just means to an end, as just slaves? How can we teach that history to our children? So, the first thing Arise South Africa will do is we will begin to teach the correct history of what Africans are and what it means for you to be a South African, what our history is, our origin. We'll scrap out that capitalist Eurocentric view of the history, where they sort of make it seem like before Jan van Riebeeck arrived, when he arrived, he found people jumping up and down, living with animals and not knowing what to do. We are going to scrap out that part of history because it's still being taught to our children today. And we are now going to create new narratives, new movies, new documentaries that will begin to tell the correct and accurate information of what Africa used to be like before colonization. We cannot allow history to be dictated to us by people that saw Africans as a means of property, as a means for slave trade. It's very dangerous. So when we go back in history, and we go back many, many years ago, archaeological discoveries, they show that the indigenous people that lived in Africa, these are big words that I'm using if you don't understand history, but those that understand history are with me. It shows that they were sophisticated. They had sophisticated systems of existence. They had sophisticated systems of trade. They had cultures and a way of living long before European colonizers arrived. So the history that these European colonizers wrote about, that actually made it to the textbooks that people learn about in universities and schools, is wrong. And it's been proven that it's wrong. That before Jan van Riebeeck in Africa, there were no systems. They didn't know what they were doing. They were just running helter-skelter up and down. They were hunter-gatherers, this and that and that. All that information is wrong. When archaeologists dig, they found that no, actually, Africans had all these sophisticated systems. And I'm going to be showing you today, what am I doing? Somebody might ask and say, this manifesto, how is it starting like this? What am I doing? I'm teaching you the culture and what we're supposed to be as South Africans. Because remember, this is more of a vision. We are sharing the vision. When somebody says, what is Arise standing for? You don't just, it has to be something deep that you carry and you understand to say, this is what Arise stands for. So we need to start there, to correct these things, to say Africans were portrayed incorrectly. How are we portrayed? We were portrayed as societies that were primitive. Every time they wrote history about Africans, they wrote about these undeveloped, primitive people. These are false narratives that undermined our contribution to the world. Very, very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. You know, they kept on talking about us to say they stereotyped all Africans as these hunter-gatherers. They said in the history books that Africans were undernourished. They said that Africans were incompetent when they arrived in Africa, these colonialists. So these scholars that they called themselves, I would rather call them, agents of darkness that lied to the whole world. They went back with these false assumptions of Africans. And they went back and told the whole world that we've discovered a new continent and this is how these people are. This is the picture of Africans. So the picture of what an African person is was defined incorrectly from the beginning. It means What did the devil know about Africans? That it had to start off by lying about Africans from the beginning. What did Africans have, or what were they? That the first existence or knowledge that is known for the rest of the world is an existence or knowledge of being primitive, undernourished, weak hunter gatherers. What is it that they were trying to destroy from the beginning? There's always been an agenda against the African people. And that's why Arise South Africa is seeking to say we must pick up this thing from the root. To say, who is this African? What is a South African? What's the lineage of a South African? Who are our forefathers? Who are those that lived on this land before we lived? We can't allow the narrative of colonialists to be the one that dictates what we are. So all those textbooks that say that when Jan van Riebeeck came, we didn't know how to do 1, 2, 3. We were, primitive. We didn't do this. We were undernourished. We need to ban them, throw them away. And we need to ensure that the correct and the truth comes out. Remember, we said here at Arise, we stand for the truth. The truth must be told. To say Africans, they had sophisticated trade systems. And I'm going to show it to you. So it's important that we understand the truth of what we actually were. That there was this narrative from Europe that came back to say Africans live in poverty and they are barbaric. This one touches me deep to say, why would these Europeans come to Africa and go back and report to the whole world to say, the Africans, the black people that we found, that they are primitive, they are barbaric, and they are living in poverty? These are things that happened, and we can't sugarcoat history. We must tell history in the correct way that it was. So this is the narrative that we were told. Some of you learned this in school. By the way, if I can just check, is this the narrative that you learned in school? Are these the things that you learned in school? This was the wrong information. Now, what is the truth? The truth is that Africans, before colonialists landed, before any ship arrived in Africa, way before they arrived, there was evidence of crop cultivation. When archaeologists were digging, they found that no. Africans were farming. South Africans, these indigenous people of the land, they were farming. They found evidence of crop cultivation. Now, where is the barbarism that they wrote about? When archaeologists dug up, they found that they used iron implements in the river. When they were digging, they found that these indigenous people, these are very smart. They had crops, cultivate crops with them. No, they actually had iron implements that they used. They found that these were farming populations, that Africans were farmers, that Africans were very good farmers. That means you come from a lineage of farmers as a South African. Your forefathers were farmers. So when you think of yourself as a South African, one of the first things you should do or be prideful about is to say that my forefathers were farmers. They had land that they farmed on. They found crops. They found crop cultivation evidence. They found iron implements on the land. This is very important. You come from a sophisticated agricultural system that runs hundreds of years back. It showed that these populations were expanding and they kept on developing. So when they found the equipment of farming, they kept finding better equipment, better equipment. How did they find this? Archaeologists, they dig up and they find history. Now, they found that this was all before colonialists landed. Do you see how wicked the colonialists were when they came, for them to go and write back to say Africa is a place full of poverty and barbarism? I think that's complete wickedness. I think that was a plan to plant a seed amongst Africans that there were people that were barbaric, that there were people that still live in poverty. And what is Arise doing? We are uprooting those wicked seeds that were planted many years ago. You know, other people will call them strongholds. These are strongholds that are upon our people. Our people, when they think of history, they think of slave, they think of suffering, they think our forefathers. No! Your forefathers, they were creating cultivation crops. They were farmers. They were innovating equipment to be able to farm. We begin to disseminate this information in storybooks, in movies. We ensure that every African is aware of the history. And that's why I'm saying to you that share the video. We need to make sure that this video is watched by as many people as possible. The information we are sharing, it's important, and it's a build-up. Every day we come, we share more information. So the video, you click on share, you click on like, you make sure you switch on the notification so that whenever I come live in these few days, you are watching the video. Very important. So it's important that we reclaim our rich history and achievements as African societies. Because nobody is claiming them on our behalf. Every time you hear somebody, you ask, where does the history of Africa start? They say, no, it starts by Jan van Riebeeck arriving with a ship. And then he uses a mirror to fool black people. No, that's the history that the devil wants you to believe. The history that these people wrote. It's wrong. The correct history is that Africans had sophisticated systems long before colonialists arrived on this land. This is very important. So we are reclaiming our achievements. We are reclaiming what the African society stood for. As we reclaim this, it highlights our resilience. That long before colonialists arrived, we were farmers. And in our farming, we had great equipment. You know, when I speak about this, my heart swells up with joy and pride to think about our forefathers and say they were farming, they were innovative. I come from a lineage of innovators, of people that were resilient, people that were farming way long before. And every African must swell with pride. This is the history. So the next time somebody says to you and tries to remind you about history and says that Africans were slaves, say, no. There's a part of history you missed. A very important part. Let's go to the beginning. Africans, they had sophisticated systems. These words. This is why maybe we need to use our own vernacular languages. Ingenuity. The innovation that was there. Now, colonialists attempted to erase all this information. All this information. The colonialists erased it. They didn't want us to know that this is the history of our Africans. This is the history of our forefathers. So, what are we doing? We are resharing African history, our culture, beyond what the colonial narrative was. That long before the colonialists arrived, we were sophisticated, we were amazing, we were very special people. Now that we've debunked that, we also need to clarify the groups that existed, because many people come and say there were different groups. This is the Khoisan group, the Bantu-speaking people. All these groups that were there is evidence that we receive from archaeologists that show us that they lived a long-standing presence in this region. Very, very important. Now, this is the part where I begin to get excited. Woo! You know, when I get to this part, I get very excited. This is exciting information. History can be very exciting when the truth is told. Now, archaeologists, researchers, that there's evidence of pre-colonial civilization that engaged trade with countries as far as India and China. Hey, no, this one, hey, this one, when I think about it, when I think, hey, no. Some of these things we get too excited because this information is information that we've been lied to for years. What these guys are saying is that before the European colonizers arrived, before Jan van Riebeeck arrived, they say that there's evidence that Africans were trading with India and China. Ah, you, an African, you come from a lineage that even before colonialism, you were trading with China and India. So trade, global trade, did not come with Europeans to Africa. No, our forefathers were doing it. Whew. Let me let you know what they found, because this is the part where I get very excited. Because if we were trading with India and China long before European colonialism settled down, what were we trading with them? Woo, this is exciting. This one is very, very exciting. Woo! When I get to this point, you can see the joy in my eyes. We were trading gold and iron. That's what we were trading. Long before the colonialists arrived, we were trading gold and iron with India and China. This is where now we go to my hometown. We're about to go to my hometown. Can I take you to my hometown, where I come from? Can I show you the greatness that is African people? Have you ever heard of the word mapungubye? Others say mapungubye. These are the ones that are trying to twang it. Mapungubye. Have you ever heard of that? If you've ever heard of it, say yes in the comment section. If you've ever heard of it, say yes, say yes. If you haven't, say no. If you haven't, say no. If you haven't, say no. President, please teach us. If you have, say yes, President. I've heard of it. They found that Africans were trading in commodities like gold and iron. We were not trading in sheep clothing or all these. No. We come from a sophisticated lineage. We were trading in gold and iron long before Europe arrived. And there's something we need to correct. Because when Europe wrote history, sometimes people will say to me that, President, why does it seem like you have an issue with Europe? Hey, it's not me. It's what they've done. Europe must really pay for their sins, because what they've done to Africa is wicked. There's no other way to put it. Europe, when they rewrote the history of the world, they wrote it in such a way that they made it that the first industrial revolution started with Europe. That's the way that they wrote history. When they wrote history, they said, forget everything that has happened in Africa. Let's write history in a way that favors Europe. And that history is a lie. Now, when you are paging, those that are following us on the book, I Am the Vision. Right now, we are on page 3. Hey, I'm looking at the time, and the pace I'm going at. Will we finish? Because we have so many things that we need to cover. But let's push. Let's see where we'll end up. Who's enjoying the class? Are you enjoying the class? Is the pace okay? How's the class? Out of 100, how's the class going? Right. So let's go back to Europe and let's study and see, how did Europe write about civilization? This is important because many people don't understand that Europe lied to try and fool the whole world. And we need to fix this. It's very, very important. Now, let's really look at this, right? This is the history of the world, right? Now, it wrote that the first industrial revolution started with them, as you can see here. So they call it Industry 1.0, the first industrial revolution. Europe lied to the world. Where I stand, Europe must apologize. And we will make sure that they apologize. They must issue an apology to say, we lied about Africa. The first industrial revolution did not start with Europe. It's a lie, a very big lie. Because before Europe started the first industrial revolution, Africans in Mapungubye were already trading in gold and iron with other countries. We were already doing global international trade. Before Europe woke up to first industrial revolution, we were already busy with global trade. That's who we are as Africans. It's very important for you to be aware that that's who we are. So Europe must issue an apology. We can't allow that we continue teaching history. No, the children in Europe must be taught to say, we apologize. Civilization didn't start in Europe. It didn't start in America. No, sophisticated civilization started in Africa. It started in Africa. And they must tell the story of the place known as Mapungubwe, where they were already trading in gold and iron. Long before Europe and America discovered these things, we were already doing them. We were already mining. Hey, no wonder as Africans, we have a thing, man, for mining and farming, you know. Every African person, we need to own mines and farms because this is what our forefathers were used to. This is our history. If you want to talk about an African, you are talking about somebody who used to mine sophisticated minerals long before the rest of the nations discovered them. You are talking about somebody who used to innovate when it comes to farming long before the rest of the world discovered them. Hey! Yeah. You know, when you talk about this history, you can believe that the devil exists because of what he did to Africa. That's it. You can believe that there is such a thing as a devil because of what he did to Africa. Now, let's read. We're on page 4. Those that are following on the book, we're on page 4. I'm going to read. It says, unlike all other industrial revolutions before it, this one offer. Okay, no. That's not where. Okay, I'll start. I'm on page 4. I'm on paragraph 2. Those that have the book. It is an emotive topic for many to consider that Africa was leading the world in terms of industrialization and civilization before the 12th century. By the way, this is not just information I'm making up. It's in the book that I wrote. So if you read the book, you're on page 4. I said it's an emotive topic for many to consider that Africa was leading the world in terms of industrialization and civilization before the 12th century. Hey, Baba, we are leaders. We were leading the world in terms of industrialization and civilization. Before they woke up and discovered all these things they're talking about, Africa was leading. We were number one. Number one. I want you to type in the chat box, number one. We are not number 2 or number 3. No, we are number one. I said to you, we are the richest nation in the world. That's the first thing. Not only that, we have always been leading. We are number one. We are number one. That's who we are. And we are not apologetic about it. Recent archaeological evidence has shown that there were scientific and industrial capabilities for gold mining, international trade, and other economic activity in what is now known as Southern Africa. So this is Mapungubwe borders along Zimbabwe, South Africa. So in Southern Africa, unfortunately, much of this progress was undocumented. Unfortunately, it was not documented. But we are here now. We are fixing it. They are going to correct it. We will ensure that every textbook around the world corrects it to say, no. Our forefathers were number one in the world. It must be written down everywhere. Everybody must know that, no. Africans were number one. That's very important. Let's continue with our study. Now, as we continue with our study, we need to reject the arrival because Jan van Riebeeck only arrived in 1652. Around the 1600s. In the 12th century, we were already mining gold. What can Jan van Riebeeck teach us? I mean, really, you're late, my guy, you're late. We're already mining gold and iron. What can you teach us? So when Jan van Riebeeck arrived, that's when the issues, we began to see something we've never seen before. That when the Vasco da Gamas and the Bartholomews arrived in the Cape, this is when we began to see issues. And when they write the history books, they say, no. Africans only started trading, highlighting the Portuguese trade and the Dutch trade around the time that they arrived. How self-centric and egotistical are these Europeans? That when they wrote history, they just expected that because they've arrived, we only started. No, we were trading with India and China long before they arrived. So they must correct it. Very important. So it's very, very important for us to ensure that all of this gets changed. Very, very important. Now, I don't want to get much into the history about what happened and, all the things that happened because these are emotive subjects. But we are aware that there was an attempt to dispossess the Khoi people of their land. There was an attempt. And this is when we now saw a battle that happened, which was the battle, it's called the Battle of Salt River. Now, this victory, there was an attempt, by the way. So when they started, there was an attempt. They failed at this attempt when they started to dispossess the Khoi people of their land. So this victory is celebrated as a significant moment of resistance against European colonization and is presented as evidence of the long-standing resilience and sovereignty of South African indigenous communities. So when they arrived, these your Vasco da Gamas, these your Jan van Riebeecks, when they arrived, they tried to dispossess the Khoi people. And war broke out. These were people that were violent. Because, by the way, Africans were very peaceful people. We are a peaceful people as Africans. So when they arrived, they started causing all these issues. And the first attempt that they made to dispossess the Khoi people said, no, it's not going to happen. And that was called the Battle of Salt River. So it's important that we also let our people know that the first time these people tried to dispossess the Africans of their land, there was a battle, and we won the battle. The victory is celebrated as a significant moment of resistance against European colonization. So we won that battle in the beginning. Very, very important. Very, very important. So when they tell history, they must not leave, because they say history has no blank pages. They must not leave out these parts that are very, very important. So this narrative of slavery and that, we were always suffering and we were this, that, and the other, we were dependent, this narrative is not true. The narrative of oppression and ongoing struggle for justice, this narrative is not true. This is not what Africans were about. And we are not fighting anybody. We are simply just educating the people on the truth, on what is true. So while we do that, it's also important for us to also learn from what has happened. Very, very important. So I just want to wrap up the history part, because we do need to move. But basically what begins to happen is we have a lot of fighting, we have a lot of things that begin to happen. But I want to go back to 1867, where Kimberley, we discovered diamonds. We discovered diamonds in Kimberley. 1867, the discovery of diamonds. This discovery, it led to a significant influx of white settlers. That led to the establishment of the Chamber of Mines. Now, sometimes when I go through the history of South Africa, I become so emotive because, what our people had to go through, it's really something painful. So the discovery of mines begins to happen. We are in 1867. We skipped some parts. We are highlighting important parts. And a lot of white settlers begin to move up. They are coming closer to Kimberley. And people are discovering mines. Black people are discovering mines. White people are discovering mines. People are discovering diamonds on the land. And immediately, there's an establishment of the Chamber of Mines. This Chamber of Mines that was established was only established by white people. And its purpose was to enforce laws prohibiting black people from mining diamonds. Imagine. The Chamber of Mines, they were created to prohibit black people from mining diamonds. These laws excluded black Africans from benefiting from the diamond mining industry. They basically cemented a system of economic exploitation and racial discrimination. Remember where I started from, where I was teaching you to say, Marxist has told us to say, if you don't understand your history, right now, Arise South Africa is saying we want to lead the nation. President Mpho Dagada is saying, I'm raising up my hand to lead South Africa. I can't lead a country if I don't understand the history of what happened. So, what begins to happen here is we begin to see a fellow called Cecil John Rhodes, who became quite prominent. And basically, Cecil John Rhodes is part of all this that is going on, where this chamber of minds is saying no black person will be allowed to mine for diamonds. And as we begin to see this thing, we also begin to see new laws that are dispossessing black people from owning land. We begin to see new laws that are now treating black people as sort of slaves that mine for the master. We begin to see this British Empire and the Afrikaners empires as well beginning to abuse the black people that were on the land and treating them as slaves to be able to mine these minerals for them so that they can take the minerals out. I said the other day, I said to a pastor, he was telling me the work of a pastor. I said, I see the work of a pastor. But once you understand the work of governance, the ministry of governance, the function of governance, you understand that the strongholds that we are dealing with are much bigger than what you see. You understand that the demonic forces that we are fighting are much bigger and older. This is what we call principalities. So the next time you see somebody saying that they've healed a headache and they are celebrating as though they've done something big, you need to remind them to say, hold on, you are dealing with small principalities. Come and join Arise South Africa, where we deal with rulers and principalities that have been alive for many years. They didn't just start yesterday. No. These are demonic principalities and spirits that ruled for many years. Can you imagine? And you will excuse my language. I call it as it is. This is demonic. How do you begin to make a rule and a chamber of minds, the gathering of demons, to say that black people should not be or should not participate in mining on their own land? What do you call that? No, we better call it for what it is. So these were demonic rules that did not make sense. Wicked to the core, rotten in every type of way. So when we are dealing with these things, the fights we are fighting today, some of you might not be aware to say, but why is Arise South Africa going through all these challenges? Why are we not on the ballot? No, we are dealing with principalities that have been ruling in this land for a very long time. That when we cast it out of this one, it enters another one. When we cast it out of this one, it enters and sometimes they group each other and they try and fight us in these ways to say these ones must never go back to that former glory because they were there when Mapungubia happened. They know the power of what we can be and what we are supposed to be. But we are on the scene. Not to worry, we are on the scene. We have arrived. We have arrived to do the will of him that sent us. We are here to fulfill that will. Woe is us if we do not do the will of him that sent us. We will make a show out of those demons, those demonic rules and principalities that have been functioning for hundreds of years on this land. We have arrived and we are here to deal with them. We are here to ensure that after we have dealt with, let me not preach. Let me not preach. I forgot I'm giving a history lesson because some of these things you can see that we are not pretending. No. These are things that are in us. They come alive inside of us because this is what we were born to do. So let's continue. Hey, I can see that I'm getting too fired up. I'm getting too fired up. Let's continue. Let me calm down. Let me drink some water. Let me calm down. Let me calm down because, if I get too fired up when I talk about these things, I need to calm myself down. So this chamber of minds, they began to make sure that every single place, black people are now not allowed to participate in the mining value chain. Then there was another group that came about. When they are now they've discovered gold, they've discovered diamonds, and now there's another group that came about. This group sat down and they said, we want to enforce taxes. By the way, when Africans were living, we don't have any proof of taxes that were paid, right? My historians can assist me. We don't have any proof. Now, this group came and they said, we want to enforce taxes. Remember, they took the land that the African people that were here already had. They stopped them from mining the minerals. Now they came and they said, we are now going to start enforcing what we call taxes. And they said, failure to pay the taxes will result in severe consequences, including the destruction of homes, the dispossession of essential livestock. Can you imagine the wickedness of these devils? That after they stopped black people from participating in mining, they then went ahead and also stopped them from owning the land or took their land. They then come and say if they don't pay tax to them, they are going to destroy their homes and dispossess them of their livestock. I mean, let's be honest. Regardless of what race you are, you can see that this is the devil at work. You can see that these are demonic activities. Why would you destroy somebody's home? Because they didn't give you your taxes. Why would you dispossess them of their possessions? This is evil to the core. And we cannot justify this sort of behavior. We must lambast it and we must expose it, and we must also ensure that there are steps that are taken to fix these sort of things. Now, this period is marked as an increase in repressive laws due to colonial interest in South Africa's mineral wealth. Hey, some of these things, when you read them, you want to cry. You know, for me, it becomes too much. It becomes too much to know that our people went through so much because of devils that were troubling them for many years. Can you imagine that this period in history, it says this period marked an increase in repressive laws. It means that every time they were putting up new laws to repress our people, new laws. Why? This was all because the colonials' interests in South Africa's mineral wealth. All because God had blessed this land with mineral wealth. They were putting across these repressive laws. Let me calm down. Let me calm down, because if I don't calm down, we might not get to where we need to get to. Let me calm down. Let me calm down. But our people went through too much. Our people went through too much. History has no blank pages. Our people went through too much. So there were characters that were doing these things. And those that understand spiritual things, we would call these characters strongholds, principalities, rulers of darkness. One of them was Cecil John Rhodes. One of them was De Beers, which later evolved into Anglo-American, by the way. So some of these demons that I'm talking about, we are yet to cut them off. We are yet to extinguish their existence. I'm talking about demons. I'm not talking about companies or people here. I'm talking about demons. So when they are trying to come for me and they are saying that Arise is doing this and that, you say, no. The man is talking spiritually. He's not talking at your level. Now, as we continue, we begin to understand a couple of things. We begin to understand that in the 19th century, we witnessed an emergence of African political consciousness. So as our people began to be oppressed in the 1900s, there was something called African political consciousness. Our people began to say, no. Hey, you know, Africans are wise, man. They were not taught. They didn't go to school, these ones. Hey, they remind me of myself sometimes. You know, they just came up with this concepts. The emergence of African political consciousness. By the way, prior to the existence of this colonialism, Africans, we were tribal, We had clan affiliations to say this clan and this tribe. So we were living in our tribes and our different clans. And what happened was in 1882, there was the first movement or publication of politics that Africans did. Now, this is the history of where politics really began. It's a Tonga name. Hey, I don't want to butcher this name, but let me try it. It was called Imbumba Yamanyama. This is in 1882. Imbumba Yamanyama. Imbumba Yamanyama. I think I got it right. Did I get it right? To my Tonga speaking people who are on this Zoom, did I get it right? Just let me know if I got it right or if I got it wrong. So, created in 1882. Now, it marked a more unified African political movement. However, this is the part that is sad. Divisions within this movement, often along denominational lines, highlighted the challenges in creating cohesive resistance. Hey, I don't like this one because it touches the church, but history has no blank pages. We must talk about history objectively. We can't talk about history subjectively. We must teach it properly. So, what had happened was the Europeans, when they came with church denominations, Christian denominations. Now, I'll give you an example of what a denomination is. There's Dutch Reformed, there's Methodist, there's NG, there's Anglican, there's what are the other denominational lines? Can we name them in the comment section? What are the other denominational lines? So this unified, now we're in about the 1900s, this unified political movement in Africa, they began to fight because the others were saying, but some of them were part of what they call the different Methodists. Some would say I'm from the different one. The others would. So there were different denominations. Others would say, look, we do things differently. So as all this oppression was happening, our people tried to unite. But because of the denominations, there was no cohesive resistance. They could not resist. So basically, these colonial powers took the land, they took the cattle, they took the minerals. They basically turned our people into slaves. And when they tried to form some form of political party or united politics, the denominations, they began to fight. There was no movement. Then there was another publication, which was a closer publication in 1870. Hey, this one I'm very afraid. South Africans, when you mispronounce, things can be very and we you don't hear about these things because lecturers don't teach this, by the way. It was called no. This one, let me rather post it in the comment section. Let me post it in the comment section. Or rather, let me share my screen so that people can see what is this one, because I don't want to butcher it. I don't want to butcher it. People will be dragging the president. Here it is. The founding of the publication in 1870. Izigidimi Zamaxhosa. Oh, Izigidimi. Yeah, maybe Izigidimi. I'm vandalizing it. No. Let me leave it. But you saw it. We all saw it. We all saw it. Right. Let's continue with our lesson. Now, in these times, these publications that were released, they were basically written and disseminated alongside Africans to understand that, okay, we need to stand up and fight. We need to do something. They began to say, you know what? They took our land. They took our minerals. They're not allowing us. We're being treated as states. We need to do something. So here we begin to see Africans becoming more conscious in terms of politics, understanding how systemic oppression works, the exploitation of South African mine resources by the colonial powers. So now there were publications that were sort of letting everybody know to say these things are all happening. Then we saw other platforms that began to be formed. This was in 1884 by Mr. John Tengo Jabavu. He released a publication called Mpho Zabatsunzu. Mpho Zabatsunzu. This was a publication where South Africans could voice their concerns, talk about their opinions, how things are affecting their lives. This is now in 1884. However, hey, the devil is wicked. John Cecil Rhodes. Hey, this devil, he started to influence the publication. So John Cecil Rhodes started to begin to whisper things into Mr. John's ears and telling him how to write African literature and basically telling him the direction that they should go, the content they should put in. So while these Africans were uniting, John Cecil Rhodes came and he began to fool them and rather force them to write falsified things. So when the publication was going out to the people, they were being told lies. Do you see why Arise is saying the truth is so important? Because even today in South Africa, there is a John Cecil Rhodes in the name of the media, and they are still telling our people lies on a daily basis. And when I say our people, I'm talking about all South Africans. Remember, and I don't want this to be taken out of context. We are not racist. We are not saying we're going to kill anybody, or we're not saying shoot somebody. No. We are teaching history so that we understand where we come from and understand where we are going and what we will need to do to correct some of the things. That's what we are doing. So I don't want anybody now saying, oh, but is Arise against these people? No, Arise is for all people. We are teaching history today so that we understand where we come from and we understand the narratives. This is quite important. Oh, we are out of time. It's 8 o'clock. Okay. We are out of time. I'm going to leave it here. Can we agree that tomorrow we will all be on time? 7 o'clock tomorrow, we are all on time. We've got our notepads out. We are ready. If you don't have a copy of the book, get a copy of the book. All the information I'm reading is in the book. So we are going to be continue teaching what then happened, and then we are going to go to how is Africa going to now change? What are we going to do? Our solutions, our manifesto, and all the different points. How did you find today, by the way? How did you find the first lesson? Can you do me a favor, please? Share this video. There are so many people out there that don't know the truth. Share the video with as many people as possible. So click the share button. We want this video to be shared far and wide. Every WhatsApp group must have it. Every single person must watch this video. Tomorrow, we're going to go in deeper to understand our history. Then we're going to also look at the history of other countries and what we can learn from them. We are building a nation here. So allow us to take time. We don't want to do a rush job. We are building a nation and we are building a force in leaders of Arise South Africa that when you go out and people ask you, what is Arise standing for? What are you learning there? Why are Arise members so passionate? Why do they understand issues so well? You tell them, no. In Arise, we study, we learn. And this is what Arise will be doing because our bedrock is the truth. So everywhere we go, we must teach the truth. We must continue. So this video is going to be up. Rewatch it, take notes, share it. Make sure you share this information. Tomorrow we continue. 7 o'clock, it's a date we are on. We are continuing with part 2. Very, very important. Do not miss it. I want to thank all of you for coming through and all the leaders for coming through and all of you that comment. Let's ensure that tomorrow there's more of us. So don't come alone, invite somebody. Remember, every day we are mobilizing for Arise South Africa. Every day we are on the ground, door to door. Every day we are letting everybody know that there's a new movement that is taking the country by storm. Every day, Arise South Africa is growing. Arise South Africa, arise.